parents are concerned, especially when their child is saved at a young age. And they're concerned because what if my child starts doubting in the future? Or what if my child was too young? Or what if my child didn't mean it? And a lot of times we see teenagers and they get to a point in their early teenage years where they reflect back on their salvation experience and they go through this valley of doubt. And when I first went to ministry, I saw that as a very bad thing, that they should not be doubting. And I've come to see it now in a different light, that I believe that God takes certain individuals through times such as that simply to firm up their salvation experience before they enter certain periods in their life where they really need that solid foundation. But at the same time, there are things that you can do to help either when doubts come or to help build landmarks in your child's life so that doubts don't come. And so first, let's start with landmarks that you can build. The first one is when a child accepts Christ, revisit their salvation experience often. Around our dinner table, and we have 4 sons, and all 4 of our sons have given their life to Christ. It is a common conversation for either my wife or I at some point to say, hey guys, tell us about when you gave your life to Jesus. And without a doubt, they will respond, well, we've heard it so many times before. And we'll say, yeah, but we want to hear it again. I mean, this is the best story of your life. So let's go around the table and let's all share our salvation stories. Revisit it often. Sometimes people, when they hit their teenage years, they begin to doubt their salvation, not because it wasn't real, but because they don't remember it. It's because it's foggy, it's hazy. They don't remember the details. Where were they? Who did they talk to? What did they say? And they don't remember it, not because it wasn't real, but because they were 7 years old and they haven't revisited it since. They haven't talked about it. And so visit it often. Let it be a conversation topic in your family. Another thing that we did with our sons is after they were saved, we gave them a journal. Now our sons, when they were saved, most of them were too young to write in their journal. So we had them draw a picture of how they gave their life to Jesus. And then they told us about it, and we wrote on there what they told us. And then again, another journal. Here's another step. The first time that they told someone about Jesus, or when they got baptized, or first time they led someone to Christ, different spiritual landmarks. Let it become a journal of the landmarks, whether it's them writing it, drawing a picture, or them telling you and you writing it down for them. Something else that we encourage parents to do is to video your child. After they give their life to Christ, sit down with them and simply say, hey, I want you to tell me how you gave your life to Jesus. And just do a video interview. And keep that where you know where it is. And years later, if they start struggling with doubts, simply say, well, instead of me telling you what happened, why don't you watch for yourself and let them watch them sharing what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they did, why they did it, so that they can hear from themselves. With children, a lot of times we are too quick to try to, quote, nail down their salvation experience. And sometimes without realizing it, we do more damage than good. Because a child comes down at camp and he says, hey, I know I got saved when I was 7, but I'm just not sure. And so it's been 2 years and I just want to know. And a lot of times the approach that's taken is, well, let's just nail that down. Let's just pray again. Let's just nail it down. And we're too quick to do that instead of first revisiting their first experience. What did they do? Why did they do it? Where were they? Revisit it with them. I know several children that as they got to their preteen years and their teenage years, they dealt with a lot of doubt because they had nailed down their salvation experience so many times. Every time that they would start to have a doubt, they didn't know where to go to. Was it this time? Was it that time? Was it the first time? Was it the 5th time? Was it at camp? Was it at Bible school? I've done it so many times, I don't know what's real and what's not. And so be very careful to nail down a child's salvation without walking with them through any previous salvation experience that they've had to help them understand, was it real, was it not? And a lot of times they'll come to the determination by you asking questions about, what did you do? Okay, did you pray to ask Jesus to come into your life? Okay, do you remember what you said? Okay, did you mean that? Ask them questions, draw out of them. And many times after you've asked them some very specific questions, they will be able to tell you whether yes or no, they did or didn't mean it. Now, I'm not saying not to ever take the opportunity to pray again with a child. There are situations where a child made a decision but truly didn't understand it. And then a couple of years later, they realize that. And a lot of times they know they didn't mean it. There was a child at a camp that I was at, and they came down and said, hey, I know I did this when I was 7, but I didn't mean it. And they told us their motive. I did it because so-and-so did it. That's why I did it. And I know I need to give my life to Jesus right now. Now, a lot of times, my wife and I, we will involve parents, Christian parents, in their salvation experience, a child's salvation experience, anytime that we can. So if a parent is there at camp, we'll go get that parent and say, hey, this is what they said, this is what they want to do. Would you like to pray with them? We've become actually a little more cautious about that after this experience, because this student said very plainly that I know I did not mean it. I did it because someone else did. And so we went to go talk to mom, and mom was so incredibly adamant of, no, you did mean it. I was there. And it was more a self-defense of, I don't want to be one of these parents that let his child make a decision who wasn't ready. It was more a pride thing for her than it really was a salvation thing for her child. So much so that she was trying to talk her child out of making a decision to follow Christ. So you have to be careful. Deal with each child as an individual. There are certain tools you can use and patterns you can follow, great questions that you can use, but just because two stories are similar, don't think that they're the same. Deal with each child as its own individual experience. And why. Baptism is another landmark. It's more than a landmark. It's a step of obedience. It's a picture of what Christ did in us and for us through salvation. But it's another landmark that a child can reflect back on because he gets to have the conversation over. You know, this is when I was saved. Okay, this is the difference between when you were saved and when you were baptized. There's a difference between those two experiences. So revisit that conversation with them as well. Let there be times where you say, hey, tell me about when you were baptized. Tell me your baptism story. And then help them differentiate between being baptized and being saved so that there never grows up in their mind a combination of the two as one experience, because they're not. Many times they will happen close in time to each other, but there's a huge difference between those two experiences. And to learn more about that, you can listen to our training session on children being baptized. But for now, let's end this with help your kids be sure of what they did, revisit it often in whatever ways that you can. And then, anytime they have doubt, walk them through their salvation experience instead of trying to slap a quick fix on it. Because after all, a child dealing with doubts in salvation is not a reflection of bad parenting. Help this child work out his own salvation with the Lord using Scripture, using wisdom, but also staying away from pride.